Heavenly Father, thank you so much for tonight and just this opportunity to learn what you'd want us to learn, Father. And just bless Pastor Taggart as he teaches us. And let us be attentive and in your perfect will tonight, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thanks. And Wesley, maybe I'll have you go back and... thanks, Chad. Just close that door. Just for the... just for sound. Okay, so here we go. Were you here last week? Okay, good to have you. And you were here last class, right? Okay. Good to have everybody here. We got Jamie's here also. So last week, just to refresh my own memory, we gave like a brief introduction to the class. Just talked about what to expect, how the evaluation is probably going to go, what's required on you as a student. We did name a couple textbooks. One was The Second Man by Wally Beebe. The other was Maverick by Ricardo Semler. I think Mr. Shepard, Pastor, you tell me you found them successfully and ordered them, so they're out there. I also have them on reserve in the library for those of you who are financially impaired. You can go in there and read at no cost to you. And then we talked about two foundational passages in Acts and then in Corinthians. And I actually, just as I was thinking about this, I wrote up some like typical, evaluation questions, and I'll try to post those at the promised website that we're going to create on the internet for this class. So that's probably how it's going to go. As time goes on, I'll post what you can expect on the midterm, and you can be preparing that way by reading those things and getting ready. Those books, feel free to read them, but especially The Second Man, I'm not going to have you read the whole book. But you could either read them now and then read them again, or wait until I kind of tell you what I'm looking for, but it could go either way. But again, my hope is that we would be like thinking people, that we wouldn't be like studying to the test or doing the, just what's that teacher want so I get an A, or what's the minimum, but just really that we'd be developing just, kind of lifelong learning and a thought process. So we talked about those two passages, and then we started talking about the leadership structure of Greater Grace World Outreach, specifically the boards that sort of govern this organization. And I thought it might be good at this time to, just to start talking about bylaws. And I was actually going out the door tonight, and my wife asked me, she said, "What are you going to be teaching on tonight?" And I said, "We're going to be talking about bylaws." And she said, "Oh boy, that sounds exciting." That's right. Here's my glasses. So I kind of walked out of the house like under like a demonic attack. Like, should I even come to class tonight? But I think we're going to overcome that and hopefully make this a little bit interesting here. So here we go. You're right, or my wife is right. If you read a set of bylaws, it can seem like kind of like the driest reading on the face of the earth. It's like reading this legal document that there's very little inspiration, very little exciting language. It's just like this very specific thing. But what it does, its purpose is to define how decisions ultimately are made in an organization. Okay, it defines who and how this organization operates, and it does that by defining certain things that, in a sense, sound like very, sort of mundane, but it's really in the practice of them that it becomes alive. So what bylaws generally do is they will define the name of the organization. They may or may not define like the overriding goals or purpose of the organization. They might or they might not, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in coming classes. They will define, and this is probably the most important thing, one or a number of boards In the case of Greater Grace Church, 3 boards are defined, but it defines boards. And you would say, okay, great. So this board, is the decision-making body for this organization. Well, yeah, but think about it. It's like, who is on the board, and how does one become a member of this board? So that gets defined in sort of detail. And then, okay, so now we know, like, who can become a member of the board. Well, under what conditions would someone no longer be a member of the board? Like, would he have a term that would expire? Can he be kicked off the board under certain, circumstances? So that all gets defined. Okay, so now we know who the board members are, so they just make decisions, right? Well, yes and no. The next thing that normally is defined is how and when do these boards meet? Like, what really constitutes a meeting? All right, can 3 guys stand in the hallway and have a conversation? Is that a board meeting? So what the board will do is it will define like how meetings, when meetings occur and how they can be called. All right, and then finally it'll talk about. I'm sorry, not finally, but it'll talk about like records for that meeting, like what constitutes an official record of this meeting. And then in addition to that, you can put in your bylaws anything you want to put in there. I mean, it's right, yeah, any organization, you can throw anything in there that you want to, but it's really like what is useful and what is helpful. And we, again, in the writing of these things, again, it can seem dry, but the purpose of it is so that all the things we talked about, you don't write it just so that it can be understood. You write it so that it cannot be misunderstood, okay? Because otherwise, bad things can happen, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But does the United States of America have bylaws? Yes, no, I don't know. How many people think yes? Okay, good. How many people think no? Okay, no one dares put up their hand. Can anybody think what the name of the bylaws of the United States of America, what do we normally call them? The Constitution. Okay, and if you read the Constitution of the United States, it's like very interesting. It talks about the Senate, how do you become a senator, who's eligible to be a senator. It talks about the House of Representatives, how they're called. It talks about the president. It talks about the different branches of government. But it's not like legislation. It more defines who the legislators are and how they get to be that and how they can be removed from that situation. We have something called, in this country, called impeachment. That's the process where you can put the president on trial for, if he's done something, certain things, so that possibly he could be removed from his office. And so the Constitution here is like the ultimate law of the land. And when a law is passed that someone does not like, I'm not saying the first resort, but the ultimate trump card they can play is they can say this law is not constitutional, okay? Either because the government has exceeded its power, like what it's doing is not provided for in the Constitution, or the way in which it was done was not according to the Constitution, okay? So that's always like the ultimate, thing that can happen. And the same thing happens in churches. And what happens is or organizations, but churches are not exempt from that, so that something will happen in the church, and someone will start to say, geez, this isn't right. How did this happen? And then they start looking, well, who made this decision? Was this really made in the right and proper way? Which is why you have to, follow these things so that your decision-making process is at least valid and stands. Now, we're going to talk more about that in a minute, or maybe in a little while. But some of these very basic things, who makes the decisions? How do they make these decisions? How can these people be removed? This is what goes into your bylaws, and that along with the charter, which we're not going to mention right now, but that defines really the constitution of the organization. So the United States has a constitution. Greater Grace World Outreach has a constitution. Okay? You don't hear it talked about a lot because we don't think about it a lot. You know, what we think about is God's in charge, is in charge of the church. He's leading the pastor. We trust the leadership. Things are going well. God is moving. He's in our midst. But it will not always be that way in the churches that you're in. So I thought we might do a little bit of an exercise tonight. I hope it goes well. But I want to divide us up maybe into, what do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We got 13 people here. So 4 times 3 is 12, and then we can have one group. But I thought I might have some group leaders here. So maybe, Chad, we'll have you sit right where you are, okay? And Pastor, maybe we're going to have you go to the back corner. Okay, just trust me on this. All right, Mr. Shepherd, we'll have you go to the back corner, okay? And then Grant, we'll have you move up front here, okay, up to that front row, okay? So those 4 gentlemen I just named are going to be, they look so thrilled about it. They're going to be our group leaders here. And then, is it okay if I split you up? Would that offend you? No, okay, so Ellen, I'm sorry, you come up here, Kanat, I'm going to send you back. Wesley, maybe I'll send you back. Andy, I'm going to send you over here. Lisa, I'll have you head down back, okay? Did I already assign you, Andy? Yeah. Okay, move there quickly, otherwise I'll forget what I did there, okay? And I just want to split up the boys and girls here. So maybe Jamie, you're in the back corner. And then Aniko, you're in that back corner, okay? And how'd we do here? Oh, did I send you back there, Jamie? That group's overloaded. Come on up here, okay? And Nico, there we are. We're just about there. Yeah. Okay. Kanat, I'm going to move you over here. Sorry about that. Over there. Okay. So, here we go. So, we have groups now. I like the, okay, you're all a group now. You're the leftovers. Whoever I didn't name is with Grant. Okay, now, I'm going to hand out, I have in a pile here some copies of the Greater Grace World Outreach bylaws. Okay, so I'm going to give each group a copy here, and then I'll give an assignment. And where'd you find that?
Amazon.
Great, so you bought it already. Yeah. How much? Plus shipping and handling. Yeah, it's okay. So he found that book for 99 cents. So there we go. All right, here we are. What's that? You don't need them. You don't need them. And I'm going to give you guys 2 copies because you're the largest group, okay?
Thanks.
Or you might need them. We'll see. Okay, so here we go. Now, the purpose of this exercise is to give you what I would call like some hands-on experience reading bylaws, okay? Everybody with me so far? I could have brought more copies, but I went this way. I may have erred. We'll find out about that. Now, what I want you to do is I want you together, or I paper clipped them instead of staple them so you can split them up if you want to. I want you to go through these bylaws, and I want you to find the answers to some questions, okay? And maybe I can put these questions up on the screen. So, okay. And maybe I can't also, but I'm going to try. Okay, so here we go. Question number 1, okay? Here's what I want you to find out. If the trustees have urgent business to conduct before a regular meeting okay? What are their options? Okay? So that's question number 1. Okay? What are their options? Okay? Everybody understand the question? So far, so good. That's question number 1. And you can start combing the bylaws for that. And here's question number 2. If the elders want to send $10,000 to, I'm trying to think of a good example now. That's $10,000 to Pastor Javid, okay? Oh, Pastor Javid, for the purpose of purchasing, to purchase a building, how can they make that happen? Okay? Question mark. So I expect this to take, like, spend some time. This is not like easy, but I want you to start digging through those things, read them, talk about it, see what you think, and see if you can come up with some answers from what our bylaws say about this. Okay? And for our viewers out there, I'm just going to take a little bit of a break here. Okay, we're back on the air here. We've kind of gone over, spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes going over these bylaws. But before we get into some of the details of this that you folks have been studying for the last few minutes here, I thought it might be good just to make some comments about this. Now, the exercise that you just went through here, pulling out these bylaws, geez, what can we do? Does this work? Does that work? All this type of stuff. The exercise you just did here, this will be played out again, not in this class, but in your future, in some church that you're in somewhere down the road, in this country or overseas or somewhere. This will be played out, but it won't be fun. It'll be like you'll be like under pressure because someone won't want to do something and someone else wants to do something, and you're going to be pulling this piece of paper out and people will be waving it around saying, no, it's got to go this way, and someone else saying, no, wait a minute, turn to page 2, it says this here. That's unfortunately how it goes. I've been in these, I don't think anybody was around at the time, but another church I was in another state, we were in this like very difficult transition some time ago. And, all of a sudden, the bylaws start getting waved around like it's the Constitution of the United States or, the Magna Carta or something. And we actually had these people in the church standing at the door handing out stuff to people. It was just like an awful situation, and someone wanted to start a bylaw review committee. And the reason is not so much that people cared about the bylaws, it's that they did not like the result that happened. So because they couldn't, had nothing to do except attack the way the decision was made. And you probably also, in a group of, what do we have, 13 people here, some of you are looking at this piece of paper and your head is spinning and saying, this just ain't for me. And others of you are like into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like this is, you're like have that kind of mind that goes into it. One is not better than the other, but just understand that in a church you need people with all these different gifts. So you might have someone in your church that's really nerdy or whatever, and they like, into this stuff, and it's like, that guy's not spiritual, or who wants to go on a blitz with him? But then, like in the church crisis, he's the guy who can actually read these documents and make sense of them. You know what I'm saying? So you just want to be aware of that. And I know we got a number of gentlemen here that think you might be a pastor someday. Well, you know what? You got to be able to recognize these people in your church because you're going to need them at certain times when the crisis comes, And so what we really, recommend about these documents is that you know what they say, that you operate according to them as a way of life, so then when the crisis comes, You know what they say and you operate, and there's no question about how the decision was made. Doesn't mean it was the right decision. Doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with it. They won't. Doesn't mean they won't attack the process. They will. And it doesn't guarantee that God got his way. All right? That's you know, there's no constitution, no bylaws in the world that's going to make a church spiritual. Okay, so it's like very, very important that you know this. But it does give an ordered decision-making process that tends to bring some measure of peace in the church. And at least we know what the rules are as we go ahead and, you know, play the game. And of course, it's not a game. That's a figure of speech. But we know how we're operating. And, you know, as you're reading these things, I think I heard a very good comment from Ellen. She said, no, wait a minute, and we'll bring that up in a minute here. I want to get some of the, like, if you have questions about something that didn't make sense, keep them in your head, because I want you to ask those questions when we get to that part of this time together, which will be in a few minutes here. But those questions are probably very, very good and very, very important questions. And my guess is that we have interpreted the church, you know, bylaws to read a certain way, and we've been functioning in them a certain way, but maybe that's not exactly what it says. So I'm very glad to have 13 people reading them, asking questions, saying, we think it means this, because if you think it means one thing and we think it means something else, then maybe we got to go back and clarify these documents, okay? And I don't know, I didn't ask the question, but as you were reading through it, did you see that whole extended section about how a pastor is appointed? You probably skimmed past it because it wasn't relevant, but if you read it, there's a lot in there about the appointing of a new pastor. And the reason that's in there is because 6 years ago, we had a mess with the departure of Pastor Stevens and the bringing in of a new pastor. It was not well defined, and that caused this church all sorts of problems in a process that was unnecessarily painful because we did not know what to do when we no longer had a pastor. What do we do? Well, it didn't really say what we did so much. So we sort of did the best we could, but now it's much more defined, hopefully so that the next time we're in that situation, it will be less painful and will work a little bit better. So I think what I want to do is I want to maybe put some folks on the spot here. Let's just take this first question, and it is, if the trustees have urgent business to conduct before a regular meeting, what are their options? So if you read the bylaws, and you did, in it, I think it defines regular trustee meetings, right? Anybody see that? How often do they happen? Monthly, right answer. The trustees will hold, regular meetings, and one of them is, the annual meeting. So the question is, something comes up, and this has happened, probably 4 or 5 times in the last few years. Something comes up, and a decision needs to be made, and the trustees don't want to wait until the meeting on the, third Thursday of next month. They got to make a decision now because something's happening. What do they do? And I thought maybe I'd want to hear from Pastor Javid what you guys came up with as the answer to that, and then everybody else will critique your answer. Okay? Okay. So Pastor Javid, a brilliant leader, is delegated, but he's got a rebellion in the ranks here, so he graciously is going to get past this difficulty. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I think it was the first one, right? D1?
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Let me get you the microphone here. Okay? Very important for our distance learning folks.
So,
Speak right into that mic.
In page 6, under section D, meetings of trustees, second paragraph says, special meetings may be called by the chairman or the vice chairman at the request of the 3 trustees, the chairman, or the board of elders, setting forth the objectives of the meeting and providing at least 10 days advance notice via postal at the last known address of the trustee on the file with the secretary.
Okay.
In other words, even a urgent meeting has to be initiated and go through certain
Right.
points.
And what I just heard you say, which is kind of new to me because we've never done it that way before, but the elders could request it,
That's correct.
right? The chairman can call it. And
Right.
is there a third option for getting a special meeting?
Yeah. But the request of the 3 trustees.
So there's
Yeah.
3 ways to get a special meeting to happen.
That's right.
Elders request it, chairman, or any 3 of the trustees. Okay, thank you. So you guys are on. So that's the way to get a special meeting.
That's right.
okay? Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Okay, so that completes the answer of the Pastor Javid group. We want to give them a round of applause. Okay, very nicely done. Okay. Now, however, we also want to like critique that answer. But what I want to say is good about it is that he went back to the document and read it. You know, it's like, what does the Bible say? Well, here's the verse. Instead of like walking away from the bylaws and giving an opinion about what the bylaws say, he went right back to the passage and read it, and that's really what it is. These are well-written bylaws. They mean what they say and say what they mean, so you can read it and it makes sense, and there's your answer. Now, does anybody here, any of the other groups, want to add to, shoot down, correct, embellish, or any otherwise modify the answer that was just given by this group here? Okay, so I got a hand over here. You have something to add also? Okay. How about your group? You want to say anything else? Or speaking for your group, no. Okay. So we're going to start off over here with Mr. Sutton, okay? Tell us how you would like to.
Just that there has to be a specified topic. Like you can't just call a meeting and say like we want to meet for the sake of meeting. Like there has to be something like very important, like very
Right.
specific. And
Yeah.
then the meeting has to stay in that topic. It can't go off subject because that's the whole reason the special meeting was called.
Right, okay, very good. And I think Pastor Javid read that in the text he read, but I'm very glad to have that highlighted because I can tell you in our operation, we fail in that all the time. We just call meetings and talk about whatever we want to. Andy, is something else you wanted to add over on this end to that?
I had a question.
Okay, I'm going to give you the mic for a question here.
Is it for the elders to call a meeting? Is it a vote between the elders to say that the elders want a meeting?
Okay. Okay, so the question is, everybody heard it on the microphone there, and I would say that what you're asking is not defined in these bylaws. So you could have a situation, and again, this can happen in a church, you know, where it could happen here. Pastor Schallers, you know, calls up, you know, Pastor Bob Colban. I think I want you guys to meet and discuss this subject. They meet and they vote, and then the other elders could say, wait a minute, that meeting's not even valid. Who called it? You know what I'm saying? So it could be called into question. So excellent point. Now I'm thinking, yes, sir.
I just have a question. Like, can you give us like an example of what type of meeting? Like, if there's monthly meetings, like what kind of emergency would come up where an emergency meeting would need to be called?
I would say, I mean,
Especially if like it even means like a 10-day.
right. Okay, so a roof collapses, okay, and we have 2 options. We've got the you know, the $20,000 repair or the $125,000 new roof, okay, and we don't know what to do. Like if I was in that situation, you know, me and Pastor Lange, we would probably ask the trustees what we want to be covered in that decision. So we need to make the decision right away because we can't have a hole in the roof, you know, for 30 days waiting for the next meeting. That might be one example.
Is it ever less than 10 days? Like, is it ever like let's meet tomorrow, or does it always have to be a 10-day notice?
Well, I can tell you with us, we walk on that all the time. I mean, not in the last year, but in the last 5 years, we've had 3 or 4 special meetings, and they were not called that way. But no one objected. So when all 5 guys show up and they vote, it's a little bit tough that 3 weeks later they say, oh, by the way, my vote was invalid because the meeting wasn't called properly. And you could get maybe a congregation member didn't like the decision. So they would bring a lawsuit, you know, into the courts. And we'll talk about this in other parts of the class. But most likely, the courts would not hear that because we're a church. they don't want to step into churches and their religious decision making. Usually they wouldn't get involved with that. But now, any other comments on this before we move on? Oh, you're afraid of getting zapped, huh?
So, like, say if the pastor dies and it has to happen, like emergency meeting and stuff for, like.
The example of the pastor dying is a bad example because we've got that process, that specific situation, that process is defined.
Right.
But maybe give another example.
If the pastor is found in an adultery.
Can you bundle up a complete package and hand it to me, a complete set of bylaws? Okay, so a pastor falls in some sort of
Obvious sin.
Yeah, terrible sin.
Yeah. And the decision has to be made, obviously, rapidly.
Okay. Well, now, and again, that specific thing you're talking about, that happens on the elders level. The trustees are not involved with removing a pastor. Okay? So the examples you've given don't apply to this problem here. Okay. So I'm going to shut this off for a second here. And I think, just give me one moment here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, now did you guys read this? This is page 7. Actually, we'll go back to page 6. Meetings of the trustees. You have regular, paragraph 1, regular scheduled meetings. Paragraph 2, special meetings, which you guys were all over. Paragraph 3, which is a majority of trustees present and voting. They make a quorum. Now, how about number 4? Any action required to be taken by the board may be taken by tabulation by the executive committee, utilizing mail response, telegram, table, telephone, or in any other way the trustees may deem appropriate and advisable for the transaction of such business, provided that all trustees have ample opportunity to participate. I don't even know what that means. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, you don't have to be in person.
Okay, but does that mean, I mean, I know what you're saying, but does that mean what I'm asking, Chad, is that a third option? So regular meeting, special meeting, or this paragraph 4 meeting? Is that another option for the trustees? Ellen thinks no. Jamie's about to say something. Go ahead.
I think it is, but at the end of that paragraph it says that it's not finalized until you all meet together.
Okay, and at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
So you can make a decision, but it's not final.
Yeah. So I'm saying we got, 13, 14 intelligent people in this room. We're not even sure what that, we would like, even among ourselves, disagree. I'm not even sure I can read this. What's that? We should definitely call a meeting here. Because I thought there was other stuff in here that I'm not even finding. Let me just, I may be getting mixed up with the Bible College bylaws also. Officers, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This is staring me right in the face. Listen, now check this one out. This is back on page 5. Oh, I'm sorry. That is page 5 is the Executive Committee of the Elders, right? No, it's not. Page 5 is the Executive Committee of the Trustees, right? Okay, so I'm saying you folks maybe missed this, that the Executive Committee, they can meet whenever they want to, but then they're presented at the next meeting for ratification, okay? So that, you might look at that as another option for the trustees to get something done, is that the Executive Committee would meet, okay? Yes, sir.
What's the executive committee one more time? In our church.
Okay. In this case, page 5, go up to the top. See that paragraph 4? The officers of the board shall constitute an executive committee. Okay, so you've got the board officers for the trustees. Those 4 make up the executive committee. All right? And they can meet and transact business, but then it gets ratified at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board of trustees. Okay? So we've done a number of those executive committee meetings also. Yes, Angina?
That's still all under A, which is elders.
Okay, I'm on page, you're on page, I was on page 5, paragraph 6.
Down to the bottom of page 5, then it says Article 7. That is where you begin to deal with the Board of Trustees.
Well, I would go back to page 4, Article 5, government. This church is managed by a board of trustees. Okay? And then, so what follows there, we have applied consistently in terms of how we interpret it to the board of trustees.
Not the Board of Elders.
Correct, especially the way it's worded here. Page 4, Article 5, government, paragraph 1, this church is managed by a board of trustees which has full authority and management of all affairs of the church, subject only to veto powers reserved to the board of elders. So based on that, we're talking about the board of trustees. Okay, and then it has the membership on the board of trustees, which has to be approved by the board of elders. Okay? So that's how we're interpreting this document. But again, your point's well taken. It's not that you're wrong, it's that this is not written clearly enough so that reasonable people can read it and come up with varying conclusions, So this is like very helpful. Okay, so we might disagree on this and improve this document. Okay? So let's go on to question 2. If the elders want to send $10,000 to Pastor Javid so he can purchase a building in Northwest China or something, how can they make that happen? And I want the Mr. Shepherd group to speak. You must speak. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mike. Here you go. Unaccustomed as you are.
This one, we were having a little difficult time trying to find out some definition on this, but I did want to read something. I have all my papers all over the place. Something under government in Article 5. And it talks about the functions of the board in exercising the authority and management of the church shall be to establish policy and directives, determine budget limitations, review all fiscal policies and financial matters, approve contractual obligations, review and approve the activities and programs and projects of the church, and to generally provide leadership and guidance in keeping with the purposes, goals, and objectives as set forth herein. And generally speaking, I believe the trustees are the people that we would go to get these types of decisions. And I know the elders might play a part in that as well, and finalizing those decisions.
Okay. Okay, anybody want to add to, embellish, reject, or anything what was just said so well? But I'm going to have Mrs. Lofbro speak because she's been silent up till now.
Isn't it all about the budgeting? I thought this is something extra. So I think we have another point talking about this. Finance committee, which shall be composed of not less than 3 members, it shall annually review. No, is it? It shall annually review the operating and capital budgets of the church and make recommendations thereto for the board. It shall review all major financial transactions
Okay.
not provided for in the budget.
Okay. So we've got, what I've got so far is Richard Shepard saying, this $10,000, this sounds like a trustee matter, not so much an elders matter. And then Lisa's saying, Finance Committee of the Board of Trustees. Now hand the mic over to Mr. Castro.
Page 7, Article 8, Officers, Paragraph 4. Sentence, I'm not so sure. The treasurer shall ascertain that all funds are dispersed appropriately and within the confines of the budgetary limitations established by the board, and report to the board or executive committee any adjustments, errors, or deviations from such authority.
Okay. All right. Now, the first thing I want to say is I just want to commend you all, okay? Because the big question is can the elders send $10,000 to Pastor Javid? You've all said no. Okay, I got trustees, I got finance committee, I got treasurer. We've all come to the same conclusion that the elders really can't do it, okay? And you have rightly read our, the bylaws of Greater Grace World Outreach. That it's the, and I don't know if you read this thing at the start, but we talked about it last class, that the elders can veto decisions of the trustees. But in terms of the elders making the trustees do something, they really, I mean, do they have a role? Absolutely. You know, of course we're looking to them for spiritual leadership. And if they were to come to us and say, please, we really think this is a great idea, that would get heavy, heavy weight from us. But they can't make, and I say us because I'm on the board of trustees, they can't make us do it, you know? And of course, even speaking this terminology, like making and can't and vetoing, nobody likes this language. We want to be hearing from God. We want to be operating in a spirit of unity. But at the same time, we want to be operating, you know, we want to do what it's written and we want to write what we actually do. The way we've functioned here, Lisa, we do not have really a specific finance committee. The whole board of trustees, there's only 5 of us. We basically function as the finance committee. We've never appointed a subcommittee. And then the treasurer that you were talking about, the way we've interpreted what you read is that the treasurer's job is to make sure that things are being done right according to policy, you know, ethically, legally. So the treasurer wouldn't say, yeah, we can send $10,000 to Pastor Javid. The treasurer might say, guys, this is financially foolish for us. We don't have the money, or we're, you know, our budget is, is so far in the hole that, you know, we have unpaid bills. That would be more he'd be more like the bookkeeper, the guy with the checkbook saying, yeah, we can do this, or no, we can't practically. But he wouldn't weigh in on that more than anybody else as a policy decision. Okay? I am the treasurer of Greater Grace World Outreach. That's my, am I? No, I'm both. I actually have 2 offices. I'm the treasurer and I'm the secretary. I was just the secretary for a long time. Now I have both those offices. And so I am in that place. I do report on occasion to the Board of Elders. But I just got to say, good job, everybody. Like, you guys got it. I know this can be a little bit like, what are we doing this for? It's because you're going to be doing it. You know what I'm saying? This scenario will be played out. And, when you're out on the mission field, you're starting up a church, and, some guy, oh, I got these bylaws from so-and-so. Let's just approve these. These are good. They'll get them into action. You'll be the person saying, like, wait a minute, can we at least read these darn things? Does this really reflect us well? How can we change them if we need to? You'll be the person there saying, there's a process to this, and you'll be recognizing people, smart people in your church, like people in this room, that can actually read these things and make sense of them, And there's also I can say this also, I want to say this the right way. Maybe I said it once already. But sometimes as we're doing these things, it can feel unspiritual, because we all want to be loving each other and telling each other we're awesome and all that type of stuff. But sometimes it just has to, guys, we got to do it this way. This is what it says, and I want you to have confidence, and again, it's between you and God, but don't be attacked that, oh, you're not filled with the Spirit because you don't have a warm and fuzzy smile on your face in a certain situation. you know. And I've been in that situation enough times in my career where, and I don't call it, you know what I'm saying, but my life, where it's like the person who's saying, no, wait a minute, we shouldn't do this. Sometimes that person, you know, kind of going against the tide is really the voice of God to save the church from bad things, you know. And I told you this, I tell you, and this is a different example, but it applies here. Like in our office, whenever we bring someone into the finance office, it's always a team decision, you know what I'm saying? So we might have 5 or 6 team members. Different people will talk to that individual. You know, what got you in is you had that connection with, what's your name, with Yulia from overseas. Like she knew you, she knew of your family, and she just told us how awesome you were. So you kind of like snuck in on a Yulia recommendation. But usually you have like 5, you know, everybody interviews that person. Then we get in a room, and if 4 people are saying, yeah, and one person's saying, usually it's the person saying, that he's seen something that the rest of us, because we all want to, you know, be happy, have kind of glazed over. So just don't, I just want you to realize in the heat of the battle, these roles, these things, these people that can say, no, wait a minute, that's not what it says, are like very, very important to the church. Now, you know, with this question number 2, and again, I don't want to create controversy. You guys got to be mature to be in this class. I can tell you that there are, sometimes we can look at this and there could be a sentiment that, you know, especially among the elders, wait a minute now, we, you know, who are we're the elders, we got Pastor Shallard, he's the pastor of the church, we can do what we want. And in a sense, absolutely, we want the men of God making these decisions, but our church has defined a process, and, you know, if the elders want to send that money, all they can, you know, and the trustees are against it, well, the first thing they can do is they can fire the chairman of the board of trustees. They can do that at any time, okay? But then they got to wait until the trustee terms expire after a year, and then they can put in trustees who are more going to do what they want them to do. We're going to break here. I know we went a little bit over, but I wanted to get that sort of module in here. And then, Ellen, I overheard a comment at your table. When we come back, I want to try and get you to say again what you said. And I can tell you what you're supposed to say when you return. Okay, so we'll come back at, let's make it 7:26, okay? We'll start up again here.